Yes, guys, welcome back to another draft rankings video. This is number 11 through to 20, and this is where the draft starts to get really, really exciting. I think you can probably throw a blanket across the players that come outside maybe about the top 5. I think most people have a similar top 5 or top 6 players. This is where it's going to start to get really club specific, and you're going to have clubs go for either players that they seriously need or they just really, really like in the draft. So it's starting to get exciting. I don't want to talk in an intro for too long here. So let's get into the picks, starting with number 11. And I have here the South Australian monster key forward, Aiden Schubert, the Shoebucker. Schubert is a 198 centimetre key forward / ruck. He does like to go in there and pinch hit. He did that for South Australia in the national champs, but his most impressive feature for me was just how he was able to glide into little pockets of space, pick up uncontested possessions, and actually be a bit of a link man in the chain. So you can imagine a similar ruckman maybe at AFL level currently is someone like a Tim English who does that a little bit. He sort of likes that uncontested football. He's particularly good at ground level, Aiden Schubert, but he can sort of push forward and win those big contested marks. I'll read you some of his statistics here. So at SANFL under 18 level, he went 19.2 disposals, 9.8 contested possessions, 7.5 marks, and 4.4 clearances, but he also kicked 2.2 goals. So he does a little bit of everything. And if you go back to that disposal count, 19.2, that is pretty high for a key position forward. So you can see that he does play in the ruck and he gets a lot of ball around the ground as well. He can float back and take intercept marks. He uses those sort of broad shoulders that he has to kind of stand in front of the ball and just use those gangly, reachy arms to take marks. And it's really difficult for a defender to get a spoil in on him. At the national champs, he went 17 disposals, 7 marks, 2.8 of those contested, and he ended up with 2.5 goals. But one of the more impressive stats for me with Schubert is the 8.8 score involvements, showing once again that he gets involved in so many chains and they seem to end up hitting the scoreboard. An important thing to note is that he played one game for SANFL seniors. It wasn't a huge output game for him there, 8 disposals, but he did kick a long-range goal from outside 50, kind of showing off that weaponry he has to be able to kick long-range goals and the power and penetration that he can get. One of the standouts for me, though, watching Schubert was at that draft combine. He went 6:21 in the 2K time trial, which is really good and gives you a bit of an insight into how he is able to get around the ground so comfortably, so easily. And when you consider the fact that Schubert is a December-born kid, he still has a little bit more growth, I suppose, than some of these other players. He could well have been one of the 2026 draft entries. So a lot of upside there with Schubert, and his stature as sort of the best key position forward in this crop is still there. At number 12, I have gone for the hyphen here, Noah Hibbins-Hargraves. There is maybe a little bit of surprise around this. I haven't known what to do with this guy. It's the big question mark that just continues around Hibbins-Hargraves is what is his exact position? What is he going to be at AFL level? Does he, I don't know, lack the robustness, the physicality? He's a weird size. He's a little bit skinny, but he can do a lot of different things. There's a lot to unpack, and we'll go through it all here in this next couple of minutes. So he's 186 centimeters. He has played wing. He has played midfield. He's played as a bit of a forward. Probably the only position I can't see that he has played this season is across halfback. Maybe he has a little bit for the Dandenong Stingrays. I think he could play halfback given his attributes, but I haven't actually seen it. He is a technical animal in and around the clinches. If he has the ball in tight spaces, there is no one better in this draft crop than Noah Hibbins-Hargraves. He's got clean hands. He's got fast hands. He can release players into really interesting spaces. Sometimes you don't see the pass before he has, and he just seems to have this radius where he can deliver the ball at any point with his hands. His kicking is really good. He can hit different types of kicks, the sideways, around the body. He can go pretty straight line and direct, and he's got a lot of penetration. His athleticism around that is really good, albeit he's quite a skinny prospect, so he kind of doesn't ever, burst through, break tackles, but he's got quick feet. He can sort of get out into space. It's all sounding pretty good here, right? But then I guess the performances have just had a little bit of inconsistency. So his Coates Talent League form, he averaged 16.3 disposals from 11 games, 4.5 marks, 5 score involvements, and 1.5 goals. As a little bit of a reference here, I went back to Harry Sheezel's numbers, who I do see some similarities in the way they play. Both of them are very, technically comfortable on the ball. They use the ball really well, and they play as this sort of hybrid forward at around 186 centimeters. Sheezel went at 19 disposals and 2.6 goals. So definitely better output, but he also played in a better team in the Sandringham Dragons, Harry Sheezel, that is. So what's probably maybe slightly worrying with Hibbins Hargraves is just the inconsistency of performance. So you have these big games. Round 18, he was a full-time midfielder and he went 29 disposals, 6 clearances and kicked 5 goals, which is just an insane output of a game at Coates Talent League level. In the wildcard round, he backed that up and had 29 disposals and 5 clearances. So it shows that he can go inside, win clearances, win high disposal, and he has all the, the running ability, the outside game to be able to do that as well as the inside game. But then he does have those games where he sort of just drifts through. He can have 10 disposal games without really having too much of an impact on the scoreboard. But what really gets Hibbins Hargraves over the line for me is his national championships. So he averaged 12 disposals, which is pretty low, but 1.5 goals per game there. And it was the impact that he had in clutch moments that really got me over the line. There was that WA game where he kicked 4 goals from limited disposals, but it was all when the game was really on the line in the third and the fourth quarter. So they were sort of goal for goal there a while. And Hibbins Hargraves just looked like the guy that wanted the ball in his hands. And if you kind of look at what he's done over that back end for Dandenong Stingrays when the Coates Talent League finals came around, that's when he really started to perform. And I think there's something kind of intangible about that for Hibbins Hargraves. You combine that with all of the attributes, which are very, very rich for Noah Hibbins Hargraves. He's got the technical skills and the athleticism, which not all players do. He's got the decision-making traits. He's got the mentality there that I mentioned. So I do think that Hibbins Hargraves could be one of those players that makes a late run here for the top 10. At number 13, I have gone for Sam Cumming, and it feels almost criminal to have him this down low at 13. He's a 186 centimetre mid-forward hybrid, but he's very different to Hibbins Hargraves, who I just spoke about. He's very much a bash and crash, dynamic, robust, physical player that thrives on the inside and thrives in the contest. And if there is any question mark on Sam Cumming, it's around that outside game. So we'll have a bit of a look at his numbers here at SANFL level. He's actually one that's played at all 3 levels. So he's played seniors, under 18s and champs. 12.8 disposals at SANFL level from 4 games. 5 contested possessions from that 12.8 disposal. So this is a bit of a theme with Sam Cumming where he's got a very, very high mix of contested possession to uncontested possession. And that's probably the one question mark on his game. Does he get enough ball on the outside? Does he have the endurance base to get the ball? And does he run to the right positions to sort of receive that outside ball? Because he's very, very heavy contest. If I go down to his under 18s, 24 disposals, 13 contested. So it's almost a 50-50 blend. And you'd want that a little bit more in the uncontested space, particularly with a player of his sort of speed, his power, and his aerial game. You just want him to pick up a little bit more ball on the outside. Now, a part of that is the fact that he plays forward. So there is a lot of contest there, of course. He went at the national champs, he went 17 disposals. I don't have a contested possession rating on that. What he does do is consistently hit the scoreboard, though. 1.6 goals at South Australian under 18s and 1 goal a game at the national championships. And he's just proven time and time again that he has impact on games, albeit at the moment, I suppose, in smaller stages. He doesn't have the big numbers of some of those sort of inside mids, and he's still a hybrid between a forward player that has impact and someone that comes inside. We just don't see consistently from him those kind of 30-plus disposal games. And I sort of, when I first watched Sam Cumming play, I looked at him to be like a little bit of an Andy Brayshaw type, where you get this sort of athletic running player that has good speed and can just run all day, get from contest to contest and be a defensive transition player as well. But he probably doesn't quite have that endurance, and we haven't seen that yet, which has kind of held him back a little bit for me. If we compare Sam Cumming to very much what we consider to be an inside player in Dyson Sharp went at the champs 27 disposals and only 11 contested there. Now, as I said, it does have to be considered that Sam Cumming plays more forward time, but when he's in the midfield, he's pretty much all bash and crash contest, and you just want him to get a little bit more of that easy ball. I think his aerial game is a massive factor in the overall package of Sam Cumming, and he does some things that are incredible. Probably if he was an elite ball user by foot, I think that would just put him up a little bit, but he has a penetration to his kicking, so he can get the ball in really deep and really quickly, maybe just not the precision of some of those top end kicks in the crop. And at 14, I have gone for the roaming key position forward in Mitch Marsh. He is Probably point of difference is his elite ground level skills and his elite field kicking. He can get the ball on the lead, use his pace to get off the line, create that separation. So he's not a big contested marker, but he's someone maybe similar to a Jeremy Cameron or a Charlie Curnow type that can thrive up the ground. And the kicking is probably the biggest point of difference there, to be able to get the ball around the flanks on the wings and then turn and hit targets. So his SANFL under 18s was 15 games. He went 12.5 disposals, 1.8 contested marks, which is a really good number there. He thrived in the contested situations at that level. That dropped off a little bit when he went to national champs, just the 1.3 contested marks. That's pretty normal, but the scoreboard impact was incredible as he went up the level. So 2 goals a game at SANFL under 18s, and he went at 3 goals a game, the top of any player in the national championships. All in all, with Mitch Marsh, the question mark probably surrounds him of the position. He's not a genuine key position forward, so you kind of can't bank on that. You could play him as a little bit of a hybrid wingy type player, or even at half back with his elite kicking skills. He's a project, but someone that has a lot of attributes that could become a serious player. At number 15, I have the Carlton father-son, Harry Dean, and he's another one that feels a little bit too low given the performances that he's put out. But I kind of, in sort of summarizing why I've gone some other key position players above Dean, for example, Xavier Taylor, who is another key defender, I just think Xavier Taylor has a little bit more scope to be more in the future. I think he's got that agility, that mobility and ground level ability that perhaps Harry Dean doesn't quite have. So he's more, not necessarily that this is a bad thing, but he's more stuck to being that, genuine sort of key position defender. But what Harry Dean does have as a point of difference is pretty much an elite left foot. He's able to get the ball when he's got a little bit of time and a little bit of space and hit targets, which not all key position defenders can do. His intercept marking is incredible, and he can defend one-on-one, albeit he may not have the most pace of all those players. So if he gets sort of a roamer like he did against South Australia in a Mitch Marsh, who has a lot more pace, he can get away from him and hurt him as well, particularly back to goal. So that's probably my explanation as to why Harry Dean is a little bit lower than others, but I do think he's going to be an incredible intercept defender at AFL level. At number 16, I have gone for Jevan Philippou, brother of Matthias. And most people, when I'm explaining Jevan, they're sort of asking me about specifics around comparison to his brother. So we may start there as a little bit of a guide. They are different. Matthias Philippou is more of a taller, almost key position, third tall type, where Jevan's more of a pure smaller player, more of a ground level player. They're both very highly skilled. They both have a lot of athleticism. Jevan's got serious pace, serious endurance, and his technical skills are incredible as well. He can kick pinpoint on both feet, one of the better kicks amongst this crop, probably only second to, let's say, a Josh Lindsay, maybe a Jacob Farrow's another one that's right up there, but he's amongst those sort of better kicks in the crop. His output was pretty good, but we don't have as many levels for Jevan Philippou as we do for other players. He only really played SANFL under 18s, and he had a little bit of exposure at senior level as well. So the 9 under 18 games, he had that broken arm in the season, 22.7 disposals, 4.4 marks, 3.7 tackles, 6.4 score involvements, and a goal a game, which is a really, really nicely rounded player. And if you look at the skill set of Jevan Philippou, he's one of the more suited players to just transitioning straight into the AFL. He's a midfielder that can run, he's got speed, he can burst away from stoppage, and he can hit the scoreboard, which is kind of everything that you need. But we just kind of haven't seen it again from Jevan Philippou. And watching back his final series in the SANFL, he probably didn't have the most impact that you would expect. I mentioned with Noah Hibbins-Hargraves, there were big game moments, and it just wasn't necessarily there, although he had patches of really good form across the season, and at times he looked $1 million. But you would be buying into this player if you went for him in the top 10 in the end. You'd be buying into a player that you'd be projecting heavily, I think, compared to some of the other players that have just put down heavier performances. So I love him as a prospect. I could see a team taking him in the top 10, but he just does have to slide here a little bit for me. Again, as I said kind of off the top, when I'm looking earlier in the season, I'm more likely to go for maybe more extreme takes on some of those players because you see them fleetingly for a couple of games in a row, and that's really all you're basing it on because you're mid-season, you haven't got the full picture there. So he's one that I thought and I was projecting and predicting that he could have got up to the top end, but he just hasn't quite made it for me. But 16, still a high pick. Number 17, we have Jacob Farrow from Western Australia, the 189 centimetre defender slash midfielder. And again, another one where if you were banking on him to be that sort of Hayden Young, Ed Richards-esque defender from where they're going to go into the AFL and in 2 to 3 years, they get injected into the midfield and they look $1 million and you've kind of recreated this A-grade midfielder, but you kind of never know with these things. And Farrow has played most of his best football across half-back. In the national championships, he averaged 19 disposals back there. 3 score involvements from the back half is pretty solid. And he was just a good sort of intercepting, rebounding defender. He had 4.5 rebound 50s, 1.8 intercept marks as well. So very much a threat in the air. But it is difficult to make that transition, and especially for someone like a Farrow where he doesn't have elite speed and necessarily elite athleticism. It doesn't have that step that somebody like Xavier Taylor had that we talked about. Some of those other midfielders can move a little bit better in there, albeit with his kicking and elite foot skills, he does have some upside on some of those other bigger bodied mids, because when he does go in there, he's got a physicality to him. It is a different kettle of fish kind of going into the midfield for, say, at the national champs level versus the Waffle under 18s level. He's sort of done it for Perth, but I kind of watched that Perth team that he plays for, and they have a lot of the footy. They sort of a very high tempo. They kind of flick the ball around. You get Swadling, who gets a lot of the footy. Farrow gets a lot of the footy, but they don't seem to necessarily, from a midfield perspective, really hurt you majorly. The Western Australian team played a little bit more direct, like you'd like to see, but we didn't really see Farrow play as a genuine midfielder most of the time. He was mostly dictating from half back. A lot of the footy that he got was kick-ins, and he uses the ball really, really well, but still for me, a project. Another one, and as I said at the beginning of this video, from 5 to 15, you could probably throw a blanket over a lot of these guys. It's just going to be who you like, and someone's going to like him. Number 18 is Oliver Greaves. He's so consistent. You absolutely know what you're going to get from this guy. 191 centimetre inside mid. We talk about all these other hybridy players and what position are they going to play. Greaves is going to be an inside mid from game 1 to game 200, and he's probably going to play that many games because he's so solid and so consistent. At the Talent League level, he averaged 25.5 disposals. At the Champs level, he averaged 25 disposals. He just puts down almost the same performance every single week. At this level, he can sort of float forward and hit the scoreboard occasionally. He averaged a goal a game in the Talent League. He didn't quite get that at National Champs. It's kind of that step up, and that's probably more what you could expect at AFL level. I don't think he is going to be a big score involvement player or a big goal kicker. He's just going to be that real physical beast around the ball and try to bring other players into the game. And every club needs one of these guys. But I think when you're comparing the sort of inside mid quality of this crop, he probably does sit behind, Dyson Sharp as a similar type player. Dan Annibal's another one, albeit a different size, but someone that plays the same role. He probably is the third in line out of those guys, and that's what's made him kind of fall back a little bit. You look at players like Farrow and Philippou and Hibbins-Hargraves, they offer something a little bit different. There's probably a little bit more upside there with their athleticism and their technical skills. So Greaves does slide a little bit for me, but at 18, I think somebody around that mark will get a very good player. At number 19, I have gone for a bit of half-back flavour here. Eastern Rangers, Oscar Taylor, lightning speed, beautiful foot skills, and gives me big Errol Goulden vibes, especially with that little bit of a burst of pace that other players don't have. We've only got Coates Talent League for Oscar Taylor. He did not play National Champs, so he's very much a Sullivan Roby type bolter. But I do think he was on the radar a little bit earlier in the season. It was probably just that we thought he was going to be more of a 25 to 35 type pick, but he just kept getting better and better as the season went on. He played 17 games, averaged 20.5 disposals. I've talked about that disposal rate being, a little bit lower in junior football because they don't play as long at quarters. He had 1.1 intercept marks, which is very good for his size at only 182 centimetres. 5.1 intercept possessions and 0.9 spoils. So he does a lot of that defensive dirty work, and it's not something that really stands out amongst his game. You see him as this offensive threat that breaks lines, opens up his body and changes angles for you, but he also does kind of get his hands dirty with the defensive work. He reminds me a lot of Harris and Oliver from last year from the Sandringham Dragons in that sense, in the defensive side of the game, but probably even has a little bit more of a weapon there with that extra bit of pace that he has. He can really take players on, test you, make you have to tackle him. And if you can't catch him, he's gone. And it means that, in fact, he has come in one place ahead of the other top halfback flanker in this crop, which is Josh Lindsay, a player that has been at the top end of boards all season, but slowly but surely just dropped down the board a little bit. And I definitely can see him going higher than this because of the decision-making and skill-based traits that he offers. But the reality is we just didn't really ever see that midfield move. When I was looking at him earlier in the season, I was often using the comparison of like a Scott Pendlebury with the way that he can dictate and sort of see the game in front of him. But we never really see him play in a midfield role. And every time you do, when he plays for the Falcons, he doesn't really excel that much as a midfielder. He doesn't really look like a midfielder. He likes to have that little bit of extra time on the ball where he can assess and hit up the kicks that he has. And his athleticism isn't great, which is probably a factor as to why he maybe struggles a little bit from a midfield perspective. But I think if you're getting Josh Lindsay, you are kind of getting this pure halfback flanker, and he's going to be a very good halfback flanker with the elite disposal that he has, but that's what you're getting. So he's fallen a little bit behind. I think Oscar Taylor has a little bit more upside with the athleticism, and Lindsay, he scrapes into the top 20. So that concludes my top 20 draft rankings. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I think there's going to be a lot of variables and a lot of difference between rankings in this part of the draft. After this, I'm going to put out another one next week, a 21 to 30 rankings. And I think we'll just keep going until we run out of players, essentially. That is a wrap for this video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.